A hidden royal decree sealed 4 years has just turned the monarchy upside down. Queen Elizabeth's secret decision to name Princess Charlotte as future heir over Prince George has been uncovered. The royal line is shaken, succession laws challenged, and now the future crown may rest on a 10-year-old's shoulders. Decree revealed, the Queen's hidden will uncovered. A hush fell through palace corridors when the decree was discovered late on a rainy evening in June 2025. A senior archivist at Buckingham Palace stumbled upon a sealed parchment hidden deep within the Royal Archives' private vault labeled "Not for Public Eyes." It was a royal will so secret it had been untouched for decades, its embossing faint, its script elegant, but the meaning unmistakable. Its language spoke of destiny, succession, and a royal mandate that would alter the future of the House of Windsor. The document was signed simply, he ordered, under the heading, "In the sovereign's final will, the destiny of Princess Charlotte is to be enshrined as successor by decree." Even the wording seemed premeditated. Phrases such as "rightful heir beyond birth order" and "Queen's will over tradition" were carefully chosen. The decree had been hidden in the palace's archives, sealed behind 3 iron doors with access limited to the monarch, her private secretary, and to librarians. Records suggest that when the Queen visited the archives in 2010, she personally arranged the sealing and reclassification of that document. Once news reached the senior royal circle, shock erupted. King Charles III, Camilla, Prince William, and even the Privy Council convened in an emergency midnight meeting at St. James's Palace. Many were stunned. Some whispered that the monarchy had been manipulated from within. Others refused to believe the decree was authentic. A few demanded immediate verification by constitutional lawyers, but the most dramatic revelation lay in what the decree claimed: Charlotte's role is to surpass her elder brother in the line of succession. The hidden will asserted that the Queen intended Charlotte to be first among heirs, setting aside male precedents entirely. It also granted her special powers as future regent, royal patron, and guardian of the crown, all titles unheard for someone so young. In effect, the Queen's final word had redefined the monarchy's future, and the House of Windsor was left reeling. Charlotte's new role: from princess to chosen heir. From princess to have chosen heir, Charlotte's status had been elevated overnight. The secret decree didn't just announce her as next in line, it redefined what she would become. According to the document, she would hold the title of Crown Princess and Regent in Waiting, empowered to act as guardian of sovereignty in times of crisis. Where once George was presumed future king, that pathway was now ambiguous. Under the decree, Charlotte would gain privileges previously reserved for monarchs: direct patronage over royal charities, a designated royal council seat, and authority over ceremonial duties during interregnum. It also stipulated she might act as regent if Charles became incapacitated, though that had rarely been granted to a non-king heir. Critically, questions arose: does this private decree override existing succession rules? The Succession to the Crown Act 2013 ensures gender equality, but it does not allow personal degrees to alter birth order. Yet the Queen's decree claimed a special exception, invoking royal prerogative and seeking to prioritize Charlotte, in spite of her younger status relative to Prince George. This means George's role is suddenly uncertain. He may lose his position as first in line or be reassigned a new title, perhaps Prince Heir, but not King in Waiting. Louis, already the youngest, would be pushed further in the shadows. The shift is not just legal, it's emotional. George, Charlotte, and Louis would now carry public eyes, jealousy, rumors, and the weight of inequality. Future responsibilities for Charlotte could include leading Britain's ceremonial duties earlier than expected, managing state matters during Charles' absences, and shaping foreign representation as a royal ambassador. Even before ascending, she would be transformed from a well-loved princess into a living symbol of queenship in waiting. The palace now faced a monumental question: could Charlotte's new role persist without ripping the royal order apart? And would Parliament, legal authorities, and public sentiment accept the Queen's final will as binding? The stage was set for a confrontation between past tradition and future destiny. Why now? The timing behind the decree's release. Of all the mysteries surrounding the Queen's hidden decree, none is more suspicious than its timing. Why was this document sealed, stored and buried, suddenly discovered now, just as whispers of succession uncertainty began circling the palace? Sources say the document was found mere weeks before the third anniversary of Queen Elizabeth II's passing during what the Royal Archives called a routine historical inventory day. But insiders aren't buying the coincidence. The inventory had been conducted twice since the Queen's death, and the decree was never flagged before. Some believe this wasn't a discovery at all but a leak. Rumors suggest a senior palace insider, possibly disillusioned by Charles's reign or loyal to the Queen's legacy, intentionally uncovered the document. The revelation came just as King Charles III prepared for a major public event, his annual sovereign speech, sparking speculation that the leak was timed to overshadow his moment and test public reaction. There's also talk of factional plotting. A growing number of courtiers reportedly support Princess Charlotte's rise, believing she represents the modern monarchy the Queen envisioned. For them, exposing the decree now, while the king is still on the throne, but aging, could build pressure to pivot the future of the crown before it's too late. Adding to the intrigue, the League, perfectly aligned with key political transitions to new Commonwealth nations, had announced plans to reconsider their constitutional ties to the monarchy, putting additional pressure on the royal image. What better time to introduce a young, popular female heir to inspire a fresh wave of loyalty? The Queen was strategic, said one royal historian. She didn't plan this revelation. What she planned for this moment. Meanwhile, public statements from the palace remained vague, offering only that the decree was under historical and legal review. No confirmations, no denials, just more confusion, exactly the kind that stirs media frenzy and fuels behind-the-scenes unrest. Now the royal family finds itself scrambling, not just to respond or to understand who moved the chess piece and why now. And that question leads directly into the next battle: Constitution versus decree. Legal and royal tension. The British monarchy isn't just built on tradition, it's bound by law, and now the Queen's secret decree has ignited a constitutional crisis that could rip straight through the foundations of the crown. At the center of the conflict is the Succession to the Crown Act 2013, a modern law that abolished male primogeniture and ensured the firstborn, regardless of gender, would inherit the throne. Under that law, Prince George, as William's eldest child, remains the lawful heir. But Queen Elizabeth's private decree challenges that order, asserting that royal prerogative can still override parliamentary statute. Legal experts are split. Some argue that no monarch, living or deceased, can supersede Parliament. Others point to historic precedents such as King Edward VIII's abdication and Queen Victoria's, both of which showed how royal preference shaped succession narrow, even if not the law itself. Inside the palace, the legal teams have mobilized constitutional lawyers, parliamentary advisors, and even foreign policy experts have been brought in to assess the validity and impact of the Queen's decree. If it's declared legally meaningless, the crown risks appearing fractured and confused. But if it's upheld, it opens the door to non-traditional succession changes, threatening to unseat George's future role. Some insiders say the king could use the royal prerogative, an ancient, rarely used power, to nullify the decree, but doing so would be interpreted as directly attacking his mother's final wishes, a public relations nightmare he may not survive. This isn't just a legal question, said constitutional scholar Peter Liang. It's a question of moral authority. Who has the right to shape the crown's destiny, the Queen who served for 70 years or the king who inherited it? There's even talk of a court challenge, possibly sparked by activist groups or sympathetic MPs, to determine whether Charlotte has a claim beyond symbolism. If such a case goes public, it could trigger a full parliamentary debate, the first of its kind since the 1936 abdication crisis. As the lawyers build their arguments and the royals retreat behind closed doors, one thing is clear: the crown is no longer just inherited, now it must be defended. George, Louis, and the line, how they're affected. The moment the Queen's decree was revealed, the royal line of succession, long considered set in stone, fractured under the weight of uncertainty. And at the center of that fracture stood Prince George and Prince Louis, suddenly thrown into the shadows of a royal curveball no one predicted. As As the eldest son of Prince William George had been groomed since birth to follow his father to the throne, his every public step from first wave to first royal engagement was watched as that of a future king. But the decree declaring Princess Charlotte as the rightful heir of sovereign vision turned that future on its head. Palace sources say George, now 12 years old, was confused and withdrawn in the days following the decree's discovery. While he was given no official demotion, yet the emotional toll was real. Staff reported he asked repeatedly whether he had done something wrong. A heartbreaking question from a boy once told the throne would be his. Charlotte's position as a middle child was never meant to challenge the crown, and yet the Queen's decree placed her directly in line for a role once reserved for her brother. Even more, it framed her future not just as monarch, but as symbolic rebirth of the modern crown, a reformer in waiting, the monarchy's new face. This left Prince Louis, the youngest, even further adrift. Previously third in line among the siblings, he now faces a world where his status may be reduced to ceremonial duties, if that while too young to understand the implications. Palace aides fear the growing tension will shape how all three children view their futures. Titles are now under internal review. George may be reassigned a role akin to Prince of Wales in waiting, though some suggest a new title entirely, perhaps First Sovereign Advisor, to save face. Charlotte may become Princess of the Realm, a title not used since Elizabeth I. Youth, signaling her active preparation for rule. Nicknames have reportedly shifted to among staff. Charlotte is now quietly referred to as the Chosen. George simply the Prince. One insider said their children, but even they feel it. The shift, the tension, the pressure to smile like everything's the same when nothing is. Publicly, the family maintains unity, but behind closed doors the balance between siblings, once protected, innocent, has now been changed by forces far beyond their control. And in royal history, when the line is blurred, brothers and sisters don't always come out united. Palace power struggle, factions emerge. What began as a secret decree has now ignited a full-blown palace power struggle, with factions forming behind velvet drapes, whispered allegiances rising, and loyalty becoming a currency of survival. The monarchy isn't just questioning Charlotte's future, it's splitting over it. Within hours of the decree's leak, clear camps emerged. On one side, the loyalists, advisors, aides, and senior courtiers who served Queen Elizabeth II closely during her reign. They claim her decree reflects her true vision for the future, shaped over decades of observation and understanding of the evolving world. For them, Charlotte represents stability, modernity, and continuity with the late Queen's values. On the other side, the traditionalists' law, led quietly by Camilla, his allies, and older members of Charles's court. They believe the monarchy's strength lies in unbroken succession, and any attempt to shift inheritance undermines centuries of constitutional monarchy. To them, George is the rightful heir. Caught in the middle is King Charles III, who has said little publicly but reportedly privately furious that the Queen would leave behind such a divisive decree without consultation. Some suggest he views it as a posthumous betrayal, a way to control the future from beyond the grave. Others believe he fears that honoring it would deal a judo eyes his son and fracture public trust. Inside royal offices, leaked memos hinted strategic meetings, reassignments of staff, and whispered threats. One memo even referenced potential blackmail involving leaked correspondence between senior royals. Another suggested MI5 was asked to investigate the leak's origin, a clear sign the crisis has gone beyond palace gossip. It's Game of Thrones, but in heels and pearls, joked one anonymous courtier. Only half-laughing. Strategic alliances are forming. Princess Anne and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, are said to be sympathetic to Charlotte's recognition, believing the Queen wouldn't have issued such a decree lightly. Meanwhile, Camilla is reportedly meeting with senior religious figures and legal experts to reinforce traditionalist support. The point of no return is near. Palace insiders say that once Parliament weighs in or Charlotte is formally addressed with her new titles, there will be no walking back. Whichever side gains control won't just shape the monarchy now, but for generations to come, because the question is no longer just who will wear the crown. It's who will survive the fight to place it there. Public and media blowback, outcry, debate, division. The monarchy's drama may begin behind palace gates, but when it breaks into the public it becomes a wildfire. The moment news of the Queen's secret decree hit global headlines, Britain erupted into debate, and the media wasted no time fanning the flames. The first major front-page splash came from the Times with the headline "Queen Elizabeth names Charlotte not George as future monarch." By midday, tabloids had added fuel royal line rewritten shock as Princess Charlotte chosen to lead. George snubbed within 24 hours. Social media turned into a battleground. The hashtag Charlotte for Queen began trending, quickly met with Justice for George. Public forums, talk shows, and even school debate took up the question, should Charlotte take the crown over her brother? Petitions appeared from both sides. One gathered over 800,000 signatures demanding Parliament honoured the Queen's final will and recognised Charlotte as next in line. Another, equally strong, called for full transparency and constitutional adherence, arguing that George's future must be protected. Meanwhile, deep-dive documentaries, YouTube expos, and long-form podcasts began resurfacing old footage of Queen Elizabeth's speeches, interviews, and private letters that seemed to hint at her growing admiration for Charlotte's spirit and strength. Lists poured over every word. One clip from 2019 in which the Queen described Charlotte as having a sovereign spark went viral overnight. "The people are no longer just watching the monarchy," said royal commentator Amelia Rowan. "They're shaping its story." Public division spread far beyond the In Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, constitutional experts warned of potential ripple effects. If the line of succession is legally altered, would those nations follow suit? Could Charlotte be recognized globally? Could George's role vary by realm? Inside the palace, staff reportedly attempted to control the press narrative, but the momentum was too strong. Every denial only raised more suspicion. Every silence felt like guilt. More concerning were the media leaks. Unpublished diary entries allegedly written by Queen Elizabeth were sent anonymously to select journalists, revealing lines such as, "Charlotte carries more of my legacy than any other child I've known." Whether real or fabricated, the damage was done. The public wasn't just watching a drama, they were choosing sides, demanding answers, and reshaping royal history in real time. And caught in the center of it all was a young girl suddenly burdened with the weight of a crown she never asked for. Charlotte herself. Response and pressure. While the monarchy scrambled to regain control and the world debated her future, Princess Charlotte stayed silent. But her silence said more than words ever could. At just 10 years old, Charlotte now faces the kind of pressure reserved for adult monarchs. She's been called a queen and waiting, a dynastic symbol, and even a living legacy. But inside palace walls, sources say the young royal is caught in an emotional storm she cannot fully understand. Those close to her describe her as intelligent, spirited, and aware, far more than most assume. While she hasn't made any public statements, royal aides say she's been asking questions. Why me? Will George be upset? Can I still play with Louis? Behind her composed public appearances, insiders report a growing sense of pressure and isolation. The Queen's decree, which elevated her beyond her brothers, also placed her in a spotlight she never trained for. Or education schedule has reportedly shifted, adding more diplomatic history, constitutional law, and public speaking training at just 10. They're grooming her for something serious, said one royal staffer, whether she wants it or not. Her most recent public appearance, a charity event in Cornwall, sparked worldwide analysis. She wore a sapphire brooch once worn by the Queen, smiled confidently, and walked beside her father, but noticeably without George. The tabloids went wild. Charlotte steps into power. Is the prince being sidelined? Behind the scenes, Charlotte now has a dedicated advisory team led by palace officials and educational mentors. Her schooling is rumored to include private sessions with former Queen Elizabeth's speech coaches, and she's being shielded from social media and outside commentary as much as possible. Still, cracks are beginning to show. Sources suggest that in one closed-door family meeting, Charlotte asked if she could give it back, whether referring to the decree or the title, no one knows, but it was enough to leave her mother, Princess Catherine, visibly shaken. And yet, her public image is being carefully crafted. Photographers have been told to capture her in leadership poses, often walking ahead of her brother's, hands behind her back, like a young monarch in training. Whether she accepts the role or not, Charlotte is no longer just a princess. She's a symbol of legacy, disruption, and unwanted destiny, and the world is watching her every move. The crown's future, shift or upheaval. With the Queen's decree now out in the open, the very structure of the monarchy hangs in the balance. What began as a historical revelation has turned into a crisis of power, constitutional, emotional, and generational. Inside the palace, King Charles III is under mounting pressure. The monarch, already navigating health concerns and public fatigue, now faces a storm that threatens to undermine his reign entirely. Sources say he has held multiple emergency meetings with Privy Council advisors, pushing for a clear decision on whether to honor or suppress the Queen's final wish. If this decree stands, one insider stated Charles could become the first monarch to lose control of his own succession. Some insiders propose a regency model where Charles remains on the throne ceremonially while Princess Charlotte is groomed in peace.